Greetings and welcome to Legacies of Wavryn, Lore of the Endelment. This will be Chapter 9 of this reading. When I came to, I had no control over my body, but I was able to see and hear everything that was going on through it. Shadow was in control of my body, which I was very much pissed about. It was like being the passenger of a supercar with some crazed ghost being the driver. "What's wrong?" Rufus yelled. "What's going on? Why can't I kill you? Why won't you die?" For some reason, after I was struck with the 9 tails, they wouldn't revert back to him. His tails were somehow stuck inside my body. In control of my body, Shadow stood up and a combination of his voice and mine slowly asked, "Guess who, Rufus?" Shocked to hear who it was that was speaking to him, the man panicked as he said, "No, it's the King of Darkness. Shadow!" Shadow turned his head to look over his right shoulder, with a big, psychotic grin on his face and wide open eyes. He had turned so far that he made it look as if his head was nearly completely turned around to face Rufus, while he said, "Time to pay up, Rufus." Shadow grabbed all of the tails from his back, then pulled them all out at once with his right hand. As he turned himself from his right to face the man, he said, "You traded your heritage for boundless knowledge and skill. An easy exchange. But you also asked for the powers of darkness. And since you haven't proven yourself to use your newly found powers properly, you must pay with your life." Frightened out of his wits, Rufus said, No, you can't do that." He then raised his voice and yelled, "I haven't fully tested this armor. You haven't given me the proper time. I gave you 15 years to prove yourself. And yet still, you deny the rights I have given you?" Shadow clenched his right hand until he had ripped apart the tails, causing Rufus to scream in pain. To him, it was somehow the most torturous thing he ever felt. Once done, Shadow said, "Did I forget to mention something? Sadly and ironically enough, the metal armor you created was only meant to protect you against the greatest of things within Earth, not to go against otherworldly creations. On top of that, your inner body has no defense once the armor is compromised. So pain and blood loss is far greater than what normal humans can withstand." Rufus knelt down on his right knee, while he looked up at Shadow in anger and said, "You son of a bitch!" Along with that, the tails have a reverse effect on them. Once broken from your body, the tails emit a powerful surge of pain that courses throughout every bit of your pathetic body. Just then, Rufus fell forward onto the ground as he cried in pain, while Shadow continued, "And it can last forever." As Rufus calmed down from his pain, he rolled over onto his back as he started to beg for his life to be spared. He started bleeding from his broken tails, mouth, ears, eyes, and nose. But to no surprise, Shadow ignored his cries for release as he slowly walked over to him. He struck Rufus hard with his right fist into the stomach and kept it pushing against him, causing the man to scream in pain even more. Shadow laughed as he looked straight into Rufus's desperate eyes, then said, "Your life is now forfeit and useless, mortal. Your soul will forever be lost in my kingdom, the realm of darkness." He pulled his fist away and went to pick him up with his left hand, trying to get the man to stand. Shadow quickly struck him in the chest with his right knee, releasing him at the same time. Rufus took a couple steps back as he struggled to raise his left hand up to where he was struck, unable to breathe or gasp for air. As Shadow placed his foot down from the attack, he said, "I'ma have some fun." He chuckled as he reached into my left inside coat pocket with his right hand and pulled out the battered hilt of Rakar. He then placed his left hand over Rakar to channel his energy into it while Rufus struggled to look up and see what was going on. When Shadow moved his left hand away from R'Carr, the hilt instantly grew into what looked like a broadsword. The blade was pitch black, 4 feet long, 1.5 feet wide, and 2 inches thick. However, it had a serrated edge on one side and a chopped up edge as if from battle on the other. The hilt transformed to just a simple gold metal handle, with a fire red spiked jewel at the bottom of it. There was also small, worn, and slightly torn up black cloth, with one end of the cloth being fitted in between the jewel and the hilt. The cloth hung from the hilt 4 feet long and 3 inches wide, and, somehow, never interfered with the blade itself. Black smoke arose from the entire weapon, yet making a quiet yet eerie howling noise. Shadow looked over at his sword and said, "Welcome back, old friend." He then looked back over at Rufus and said, "Let's have some fun now." Shadow swung his sword at Rufus in an underhanded and upward motion with the chopped up edge of the blade. When the blade struck, it didn't actually cut him. It just smashed into him and threw him into a building. The dark being jolted over so that he could intercept the man, striking him again with the sword. Within 10 seconds, Shadow had struck Rufus about 30 times, slamming him hard into the cement, some of the cars, and 2 different buildings over and over again. All of which he did just for his own enjoyment. Slamming Rufus down onto the ground again, Shadow hovered over and asked, "What's the matter, Rufus? I thought you had the powers of darkness. Weren't you supposed to be stronger than me? Stronger than Zaec, Raek, and Shero?" As Rufus struggled to just brace himself to sit up, Shadow tossed up his sword with his right hand and grabbed it again at the tip of the blade. He then threw his sword straight at Rufus like a dart. Just as Rufus looked up, the sword stabbed him through the center of his upper torso and slammed him back onto the ground. "You're starting to bore me, mortal. It's almost not even worth taking your life. But, of course, that too is a fun part." Shadow then raised his voice and yelled, "Come on, fight me, damn it. It's not every day that I get to exercise like this." After a few seconds, he raised his right hand up slightly and cracked his knuckles just by bending his fingers in a bit, then said, "Pathetic." He jolted down at Rufus and pulled back his right fist for another strike, but he was intercepted before he could strike again. Fox quickly kicked the right side of Shadow's head with her left foot, trying to stop and distract him long enough so that Wolf could grab Rufus. Wolf, in a desperate attempt to pull the man away, quickly grabbed the hilt of the evil sword with her right hand and pulled it out to release him. She was violently jolted by an electrical force as she held onto the hilt. However, she managed to muster out the strength needed to remove the wicked blade and stab it back into the ground a ways, her hands slightly burned from the sword's dark powers. Wolf jolted back with Rufus towards Jewel to keep the man safe, because she knew we still needed to get information from him. Though Fox kicked Shadow, nothing actually happened. Shadow just stopped going for Rufus and was now agitated and wanted to fight the Alicans. He acted stunned for just a bit, then flipped around to hover upside down. He crossed his arms and faced the Alicans with his insane stare as he said, "My, aren't you the feisty one? Some find that arousing." Fox jumped back, shaking her foot a bit to relieve the pain she inflicted on herself when she kicked Shadow. When she placed her foot down, she asked, "Why are you doing this, Zaec? What's gotten into you?" Shadow laughed at that, sensing that Fox hadn't realized who was really using my body, then replied, "You know, you are kinda cute, but you're still nothing but a waste of flesh and blood. A disgrace for all fox breeds. But then again, not very many fox breeds are honorable. Some also find that around— Shut up!" Shadow drew a blank stare as he reached for his sword with his left hand. grabbing the hilt so that he held it backhanded. He turned himself upright and placed his feet on the ground, then said, "Don't bother trying to stop me. Any more interference from you, and I will be forced to kill you. I'm doing my best to hold back, but you're making it more difficult to punish someone that deserves to be stripped of his life." He then raised his right fist up slightly as he became very angry and yelled, "I'm doing my best, damn it, so step off." He growled for a bit, then said to himself, "I swear I'm gonna pop a blood vessel because of these idiots." "Please, Z," Fox begged as to try and stop who she thought was still me. "Stop this at once. I beg of you. Please. Rufus has had enough. We all have." Shadow, sadistically enough, became happy at that and laughed as he turned away from her. He then said, "No, he hasn't. He believed that he had ultimate power, the power of a god. And so, he believed that he was immortal. But the fact is, he wasn't any more immortal than any of you pathetic weaklings. Therefore, he must feel the raw power of darkness, and Rikara and Enzar, just so I can prove a point. He's only felt 5% of both the horrifying power of Rikar and my own. I intend to make him feel more." Shadow flipped his sword around to hold it forward, then raised it up in the air as he said, "Watch." As he swung Rikar down, he yelled, "Scattershot!" The blade smashed into the ground, and 5 black waves of dark energy came from it and flew straight out into the city. The waves of dark energy each struck a building, but blew up the entire city of Miami, leveling it into nothing but rubble. Afterwards, Shadow turned around to face Fox as he pulled his sword out and said, "That blast was just 30% of Rikar's true power. Don't make me use it on you." I noticed that Fox was absolutely frightened from what she just saw, but she was determined to keep Shadow from Rufus. Determined to stop him. Even with her fear, she just clenched her fists tight as she took a step forward with her left foot in defense. "So, you still plan to get in my way, do you? You poor thing. Didn't your mother ever tell you not to pick fights that you know you can't win?" Shadow laughed at that thought, then continued, "Oh, that's right. You don't have one." "Shut it," Fox barked, shedding a few tears. "I'm done speaking to you, Quellen." "Such hatred. I like that. I like just about everything of you. Maybe I won't kill you after all. But as the bitch that you are, I will teach you some respect." Shadow jolted towards Fox, and before she could even attempt to block the attack, he swung and struck the blade at her mid-torso. He only used enough to push her towards Wolf and Jewel, slamming her into the ground just in front of them. He then quickly motioned into a front flip over her and stabbed his sword into Rufus, who laid on his back. With a very dark and vicious tone as he looked down into the man's eyes, Shadow said, "So long, mortal." He quickly flipped his right hand around to grab his sword backhanded. With that, he twisted it backwards and broke apart the entire armor, disintegrating it into thin air. Shadow then let go of his sword, looked over at Fox as Wolf picked her up, and said, "Next time, I will blow you away." Shadow gave a sinister laugh as he handed control of my body back over to me by making me faint. I barely heard Jewel as she called out to Rufus to stay alive, but I was sure she called him father. I woke up in a daze about 5 minutes after the incident, with my head in Wolf's lap as she gently pet my head with her right middle finger, her other fingers spread out slightly. At the same time, Fox sat on my waist, facing Jewel with a sad expression. She probably sat on me to keep me from doing anything more drastic. Though I had a good idea of why, I noticed Jewel crying near where Rufus once was. As I regained my focus, I looked over at where the man had laid and noticed that Ricard didn't revert back into its hilt form. It was still stabbed into the ground. The emergency crew for the humans had arrived and were spread out all over the area. While taking care of their own, the fire department went through the wreckage of the private, public, and state property looking for others. I looked up at Wolf with a light smile on my face and said, "You're such a good girl, Wolf. I hope you didn't hurt yourself too badly from handling that sword." She looked down at me and sniggled, then said, "Don't worry, my lord. I'm fine." Fox looked over at me, gave a light smile, then she slapped me across the face with her right hand. As I looked up at her, she said, "Don't pull that shit off with my Wolfie again, or I will kick your ass, see?" "Good to see you're okay too, Fox," I uncaringly said. The two stood and grabbed each of my arms to help me up, while Fox said, "I can't believe you let the King of Darkness possess your body, Z." Once I got on my feet, I walked over to Ricard and said, "Didn't have a choice. Plus, I needed to speak with someone about something." I looked over at Jewel and asked, "What's she crying about?" "We'll explain it to you later, my lord," Wolf replied. "Whatever," I said as I grabbed the hilt of Ricard with my right hand. The second I grabbed the hilt, I was temporarily transported back to the God Realm, with only Shadow sitting in front of me in his pitch-black, nine-tailed fox form, which was just as big as lights. He just sat facing me from about 6 feet away, while he stared me down with his giant fire-red eyes and his big evil grin. I glanced down to see that Ricard had reverted back to its hilt form, but my right hand had that weird black smoke rising from it that Shadow's blade had. As I looked back up at Shadow, he gave a sinister laugh, then said, "Have fun, my lord." Shadow's image faded away as he began to laugh out loud, echoing in my head even after he disappeared. It was as if he was mocking me in some creepy way that I couldn't understand. However, I wasn't about to let him rule me. Not now, not then, nor ever in my life. I regained my focus on reality after Shadow and his laughter vanished from my presence. Wolf grabbed my left shoulder with her right hand and asked, "You okay, my lord?" I glanced down at Ricard again and said, "Yeah, I'm fine." Put Ricard into my left inside coat pocket as I looked over at her and asked, "What now?" "Jewel has a place where we can stay for a while. Come on. It's in something called New York." Having heard that, I thought, great! Another thing that I hate just as bad as Mondays. A major fucking city littered with humans. What else can go wrong for me? I probably shouldn't have asked, even if to myself. This concludes the reading of Chapter 9. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, there will be a link to my physical works in the description below. With that being said, stay safe, take care, and we will see you again next week, reading Chapter 10.